video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon! It's 6 feet of bubblegum for you, not them. A year after its opening, Nickelodeon Studios was already paying off for the channel. It allowed for a centralized production location for new Nickelodeon shows, keeping production of Clarissa Explains It All, Welcome Freshmen, and Get the Picture all under one roof, not having to scatter them out to studios all over the country like before. Florida, being a right-to-work state, didn't hurt either. And the studio was an effective marketing campaign, a large interactive billboard for their cable channel, not too far off from the gates of this brand new Orlando theme park. Nickelodeon Studios was a brand synergy like no other, and now with some experience under their belts, they could polish things up so that it could be even better. The slime geyser out front was finished and turned on, the mock audition space that ended the tour was replaced with the flashier game lab, and a new show to subtly promote the park was in the works. Nickelodeon had a show like that before, Outta Here, the first series officially produced at Nickelodeon Studios. The show had a simple format of hosts interacting with park guests in the studio, playing games and running polls, interspersed with pre-recorded segments filmed at Universal Studios Florida, showing off the park and interacting with tourists. A show that was both a fun thing to do for visitors at the park and a way to sell Universal Studios to the young cable-watching audience. However, Outta Here had a few issues. First, it was produced at the tail end of Nickelodeon's experiment in using young people as hosts. Shows like Rated K, For Kids by Kids, Don't Just Sit There, and the Nick Hit List had child presenters as a way to make Nick's unofficial For Kids by Kids slogan a reality. This didn't quite work, as even a talented child actor doesn't necessarily have the chops to improvise during an interview. Now, the young hosts of Outta Here weren't bad at their jobs, not at all, but Nickelodeon dropped the trend going into the larger 1990s, opting for charismatic adult hosts like Mike O'Malley. Second, Outta Here separated kids from their parents in a very clumsy manner. The live audience for this show were park guests who bought tickets at the gate, but the parents rarely participated, getting their own seats off camera and just waiting, doing nothing. The show wasn't a daycare service. They couldn't just leave their kids at the studio and go to other attractions while the camera was rolling. While I'm sure many of these adults were happy to get out of the sun, happy to see their kids having fun, it was still an uneven attraction. And third, Outta Here just wasn't all that flashy and the games weren't all that interesting. Nickelodeon had found its success with wild and messy game shows, where you might pick a giant nose or tear apart a bathroom in search of a flag. On Outta Here, you might get to throw a beach ball around. Wow, I'm so glad we drove 8 hours to Orlando and had my parents pay $40 for these tickets so that I could toss a beach ball around on television. It's the same reason they got rid of the audition room and replaced it with Game Lab. Park guests wanted that messy, fun Nickelodeon experience. Outta Here simply did not work for its intended purpose, and would close down shop in January of 1991 with less than a 5-month run. But Nickelodeon still wanted this kind of show, this cross-promotion programming that worked as a fun show on its own, as a fun attraction to those visiting the studio, and a sneaky advertisement for Nickelodeon Studios. So while the set was getting stripped for parts, Nick began developing its replacement. A show that had the fun adult host, a show that utilized the parents as well as the kids, and a show that was much weirder, messier, and sillier. On August 31st, 1991, Nickelodeon premiered What Would You Do?
Just a plain old pie, huh?
Wrong! Because when Nickelodeon's What Would You Do gets a hold of it, it's a shirt! It's a face cream! It's even a cure for baldness.
I'm Marc Summers, and when you watch What Would You Do, you'll see a different kid co-host every day. The giant wallow stuff, outrageous pranks, bizarre talents, and 101 ways to get up close and personal with a pie.
Don't miss What Would You Do? Weekdays at 6, 5 Central on the only network for you, Nickelodeon.
Hosted by Double Dare's Marc Summers, What Would You Do was a free-form audience interaction show where park guests would be put into some weird, messy, and silly situations. This typically came in 3 flavors. First, Summers would find people in the crowd and draft them into participating in some wild show like dancing in flippers or having a mom bodybuilding contest.
Margie is retired. She likes horseback riding and swimming. and she would love to be stranded on a desert island with Prince Charles.
Second, segments filmed outside the studio, usually out in the park at Universal Studios Florida, where park guests were invited to do something silly and potentially embarrassing. Would you dress up like MC Hammer and do an impression? Would you be the back half of a horse costume? If given the choice, would you rather kiss a frog or a snake?
Oh, no! Bring our snake. The other animal. You want to kiss the snake?
And then third, the episode would wrap up with the What Would You Do medley, in which random guests would be put onto stools, have index cards stuck to their foreheads, and be given a choice. Do what was on the card, or go to the pie pod, a contraption that would throw between 1 to 4 pies directly at your face. Usually Summers gives the audience the choice of how many pies are thrown, and they always choose 4.
So you help me out on the count of 3. We're going to let it go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Here goes pie number 1, pie number 2. There's 3, and there we go. And we have a lot more where that came from here on What Would You Do? Stay with us.
This show was all about pies, in fact, coming up with new and wilder ways to pie their audience as the show progressed. A 5th pie was added to the pie pod, and a bucket of pink goo placed overhead called the Crowning Glory. Then there was the pie slide, where you slid into an absolutely massive swimming pool of whipped cream. There was pie roulette, where you rolled a dice to see how many times you turn a crank, and if it's too many times, pie in the face. There was pie in the sky, a contraption in which 2 parents were asked questions about their kids, and if they got a question wrong, pie filling would pool down until it got to them. There was the pie pendulum, a medieval torture device that slowly lowered you into a pie. There was the pie wash, where you would sit in a spinning chair while getting hosed with whipped cream, and then a giant car wash roller would come over and clean you up. And the ultimate feat of pie engineering, the pie coaster.
1, 2, 3. Here he goes, and here comes the first drop. What would you do? Yes. Take a look at that. How you doing? He's eating the pie.
But despite coming up with as many new high-tech versions of the pie-in-your-face gag as possible, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you what Would You Do was really about. The title would suggest being put into positions where you have to make a choice, and I guess that does happen, but the choice is always show off a hidden talent or sit in the pie pod. So what exactly is What Would You Do? What Would You Do was the second Nickelodeon show produced by Woody Fraser Productions, the previous being the fairly successful Wild and Crazy Kids. We covered Woody Fraser's career in depth on our video for that show. I highly recommend checking it out, but for a quick refresher, Fraser had been working in television since the 1950s and had made a name for himself, first in daytime talk shows, then in cheap, unsafe variety shows that featured self-proclaimed daredevils frequently hurting themselves. Then after his stint on Nickelodeon, he became buddies with Fox News, and then was fired from the Hallmark Channel for sexual harassment claims. Fraser passed away not too long ago, on December 21st, 2024, at the age of 90. I hope you don't mind. Didn't feel he was quite worth the beginning of the video memoriam. What Would You Do is very much in line with what Fraser had produced in the 70s and 80s, shows like That's Incredible, which featured rapid-fire segments with over-the-top personalities and dubious value. I previously called these kind of shows trash television, and I stand by that. I don't mean these shows aren't entertaining or aren't successful, but are the most sickly sweet of brain candy. These are the kind of shows that you half-watch when nothing's on, not a thought in your head as flashy things hold your attention for 30 minutes. And yeah, What Would You Do does kind of feel like a children's version of these kind of shows. It even borrows a lot of features of some of the biggest tentpoles of trash television. We have the funny hidden camera segments of Candid Camera, the audience voting machines of America's Funniest Home Videos, the pick between 3 doors game commonly associated with Who Wants to Make a Deal, the wacky audience participation stunts of Truth or Consequences. It's really playing the hits. Early in development, there actually was an emphasis on making decisions. Thanks to some generous viewers, I managed to get my hands on 3 What Would You Do test pilots. Filmed in a stripped-down version of the Outta Here set, this early version hadn't quite figured out that pies and mess were the key to everything, and instead featured segments where audience members would reach into a bag and pull out a card with 2 options to choose from.
Okay, reach down in there. And it says...
Would you rather stand on your head or do a somersault?
What would you rather do, stand on your head or do a somersault?
I can't stand on my head, so I better do a somersault.
All right, come on over here. Robin, don't we have a little mat out there? Very nice, Robin. Thank you. Let's put it out right over there. And you said that you would rather...
Do a somersault.
All right, here she is from Philadelphia. Nice job, all the way down. Put your head down. You can do this. All right.
Somersaults and handstands, riveting television. These decisions would also be given to park guests, and oh look, this family speaks Spanish. Wait, Marc Summers, no!
So you either have to do El Somersalte or stand on El Hedo, okay? That's fine.
Some segments were recycled for the television version. For a brief period of time, Nickelodeon experimented with turning the Doo-Wop-osaurus, the singing dinosaur from one of Johnny Album's animated promos, into their channel mascot, creating a quite off-model theme park costume for the character. One of the pilots featured a segment where park guests were invited to Doo-Wop-osaurus' birthday party and were served a spaghetti meal, but weren't given any utensils. Will the guests eat the spaghetti with their hands? What would you do?
All over herself, all over the table. But heck, who cares? We don't get to do this at home. And here's a man who doesn't know the meaning of the word napkin.
But once these segments were recycled into the main show, the whole making decisions element took a backseat to chaos. And it was chaotic. What becomes very apparent marathoning this show is that everything is being done on a rushed schedule, and a lot of this is being improvised on the spot. By the time the What Would You Do melody starts, everyone seems to be in a panic. Many times the show doesn't get to all the invited guests, and Marc Summers, who is also given a card, almost never gets around to doing his. At first I thought this was a running gag, apologies to Matt Damon, we ran out of time kind of thing, but no, I really think they kept running out of time.
I won't have time to do mine today. What was it? Eat a hamburger with honey. Oh gosh, doggone it.
End credits are often rolling while guests are still doing their activities or getting into the pie pod. So why does everything feel so stressed out and seat of their pants? Well, for one, this isn't just a television show, but a theme park attraction, meant to rotate tourists in and out at a relatively steady pace. Now, isn't that true of other Nickelodeon game shows with a live studio audience? Not really. First off, a typical game show has a structured format that allows for a very specific amount of time for each round. There are no variables that would make a round run long. What Would You Do had plans for each episode, but there were way too many variables, too many human elements to give a segment a planned finish. Second, the live audience at a normal game show is rarely on screen and doesn't factor into the episode at all. So it's fine if, say, only 2/3 of the seats are filled. The audience in What Would You Do is critical to everything. It has to be a packed house every time, which means about 160 people. As with most game shows filmed at Nickelodeon Studios, you could get tickets for the show at the front gate, but there was also a mobile ticket booth that usually hung around the futuristic world of Hanna-Barbera attraction, plus wandering employees giving out free tickets just to make sure the seats are filled. Which leads to the third issue, gambling on audience participation. Contestants for normal game shows are vetted and know what they're getting into. Nobody in the audience for What Would You Do knew exactly what they had signed up for, at least not for the first season before the episodes had aired. I imagine a solid chunk of any given audience were parents just wanting to get out of the sun. With Marc Summers picking people at random, every activity becomes a negotiation, with some audience members refusing to participate.
Oh, come on over here, Dad. Don't stand over there. We want you to stand all the way over here. And what is your name, sir? We stumped him, ladies and gentlemen. He has no idea what his name is. No.
I'm sorry, it's not nice to make assumptions, but this guy has some major witness protection energy. Still, better than the time lobbyist and future Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort showed up.
This is her husband's wallet. Oh, sir, how many American Express cards does one person need? Let's count them together. There's 1, 2... wait a minute. There's three American Express cards. He's got a gold, a platinum, and a corporate. He's got 9 visas and an AT&T credit card. Okay, fine. Well,
On top of all of this, every episode has to be different. Repeat segments made for bad TV. Most game shows can swap out questions and puzzles and leave everything else the same, but every episode of What Would You Do is a wild, improvised ride into the unknown, and it was up to Marc Summers to wrangle all of that in. Marc is the master of being in the middle of unsettled, totally ad-lib situations and still making sense of things. He's a true catalyst. That is quite the compliment to Summers, but it might also be Woody Fraser feeling he could do whatever he wanted to the guy. Marc Summers only rarely got messy on Double Dare, maybe the odd splashback from a physical challenge, but getting messy was the kid's job, not his. What Would You Do has Summers front and center in a lot of these activities, and sometimes it seemed the production was even pressuring him beyond what was reasonable. One episode opens with Summers introducing the pie slide, only to be told he'll be the first to go down it, and Summers starts calling out Fraser directly.
No, I don't want to do this. Wait a minute. Wait, it's my show.
Not anymore. Now let's sit down. Take your shoes off.
Wait a minute. Where are we going?
Mark, no. Come on,
No, I'm gonna take my shoes off.
Take your shoes
I
off.
want to know something. Where's Woody? Where's Woody? I want to bring him out here. Where's our executive producer?
Oh, he had to go home for a little bit, Mark. He had to go home for a little bit. Come on.
And this is the beginning of the episode, so Summers is spending the entire rest of the episode trying to get himself cleaned up while leading park guests through these other activities. You might have noticed that Double Dare's Robin Russo is also there as Summers' assistant, and I don't think she's having a great time either. In fact, I looked through Slimed, an oral history of Nickelodeon's golden age, and Russo has a few choice words. Mark and I went on to do another show called What Would You Do?, which I called Why Are We Doing This? I kid you not, that was the only time What Would You Do is mentioned in the entire book. Family Double Dare was still in active production all through this show's run, and what's more, it was taking up everyone's weekends. What Would You Do shot 4 episodes on Saturday and 4 episodes on Sunday, which makes sense as a theme park attraction. That's when guest attendance is highest. But you're stealing away a production crew's weekend, and there were probably a few times Summers and Russo found themselves having 7-day work weeks. Did I mention the shows made at Nickelodeon Studios were non-union? And putting Woody Fraser on a non-union production sounds ominous. Remember, so many amateur daredevils were brought onto That's Incredible, many of whom got seriously hurt with broken bones and burns. But hey, this is a kids' show. This is filmed at a theme park. This is under Nickelodeon's watchful eye. Surely Fraser wouldn't put people into dangerous situations with non-professionals, right?
This guy Woody was so cheap. So we wanted to do this thing with monster cars, and he wanted to roll, crush a car. So they didn't have the money to get the real monster car guy. So there was a guy like, Steve's Monster Cars somewhere in Orlando. And they hired the guy and they said, have you ever crushed a car? And he went, yeah. Well, he'd never done it before, okay? So they put me in this monster truck without a helmet. And the guy's trying to go over and he can't do it. And the car's going like this and it goes like this. And I could have gone backwards and died, okay? We barely got over the thing. I ran out of the freaking truck and I started pummeling Woody.
Show me how.
You son of a bitch! You almost
I think it's being prolonged just to make me a little more nervous. I've watched this at 3 a.m. on ESPN numerous times, never thought I'd actually be a part of it. Now I need to go very fast, they say. We need to go fairly quickly. We're going backwards. We should be going forwards. I'm scared to death. I don't know what to expect. Oh! Holy cow! Cut the engine! Boy, that was a thrill of a lifetime, and if you think that was great, stay tuned to more of What Would You Do? Holy man! I can't believe we were straight up, weren't we?
To the best of my knowledge, no one was ever seriously hurt on the set of What Would You Do? Thank God. But knowing this story, and Fraser's larger reputation, puts the fear of God in me, seeing random tourists getting put into these acrobatic rigs, or being told to rappel down the front of the studio. Hey, have these people been vetted? Who are they? Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God! Eventually, Nickelodeon realized that Woody Fraser was not a good fit for the channel. After the show's initial 65-episode first season, Fraser and his production crew were removed, leaving the show under the stewardship of Reeves Production. While I get the sense that there was a lot of issues behind the scenes that led to this decision, Marc Summers points out one specific moment.
It went through a series of producers. We had a producer by the name of Woody Fraser. He was a really loud and swore a lot. And so he was doing the first cycle of What Would You Do? And something went wrong, and he took the headsets. Now you got to figure it's an audience of moms and dads and kids, and he put the headsets down. And, you fucking! And he started screaming all that kind of stuff. So they threw him out, and they brought in a whole other producer. I don't know. It was an odd show. The network never liked it. They couldn't figure out what it was. Each day it changed.
A 25-episode second season was produced in 1993, which saw some changes. The set got a fresh coat of paint. Robin Russo left the production. Wikipedia says for pay disagreements, though that's unsourced. To make up for this, the show would choose a kid in the audience to be the co-host of the day, which never seemed to mean much. You just got to hang out with Summers a bit more than everyone else.
So, how we select these co-hosts is you're standing out in line, and what happens?
This lady just came up to me and asked me if I wanted to be a co-host.
And you said, of course, right?
Yes.
Oh, good. So we're going to use you a lot today. You got a lot of work to do, so we'll see you in just a few moments. Round of applause for Dick.
The What Would You Do medley was replaced with the Wall-O Stuff. Random audience members would be given a token that they could slot into one of 20 doors. Sometimes the door would open and you would get a t-shirt. Sometimes it would open and you would get a pie in the face. It's fine, I guess. You don't mind it so much that the end credits run over it.
How about you? Do you know which door you want to go to?
18.
Number 18. Got your coin? Put it in number 18, right over there, and open up this door. Let's see what comes out. Let me help you out there. There it comes. What'd you get? Oh, you got pie there a little bit.
None of these things are improvements so much as they're patches to production issues. What Would You Do still ran at a breakneck speed and never really focused up. So we have a show built on a rush schedule, led by an irresponsible producer who got fired for cussing in front of kids. And nobody really seemed to like working on it. So was the end result at least good? It seems fairly well remembered by the 90s Nickelodeon nostalgia crowd, and I know I watched a ton of it as a kid because it was trash television. It was proper turn off your brain programming. And going back to it today, there are a few elements I can appreciate. The show often brought in local entertainers and street performers as special guests, the kind of talent you would see in a montage at the end of a Hocus Pocus retrospective, and I think that's pretty cool. Seeing performers like this always puts a smile on my face. You don't have a lot of space for smaller acts on cable television these days. The self-promotion stuff feels a little less blatant on this show than it did on Outta Here, mostly because it's tightened up to just Nickelodeon Studios. While the Outta Here kids would be doing skits in front of the Jaws attraction or what have you, What Would You Do mostly stuck to having games outside of the studio. Dunk tanks, hide and seek, pie fights, always making sure you get a good look at Nickelodeon Studios and the Slime Geyser. At least once they brought in staff members from the Game Lab to show off some of the games guests would play after the studio tour.
Now, Bob is a very talented gentleman here. He works at Game Lab. Explain what Game Lab is to the folks who've not been here.
Game Lab is our attraction side here at Nickelodeon Studios, an opportunity for kids to come down and play and actually touch Nickelodeon a little bit. It's a lot of fun.
So at least on that level, What Would You Do has maintained a bit of historical importance, at least as far as Nickelodeon history goes. And the growing complexity of the pie devices is fun, I'm not gonna lie. I want to go on the pie coaster. It's trash television, but trash can be fun. What Would You Do would only film the 2 seasons, the last new episode airing on the channel on November 12th, 1993. It stayed in reruns for quite a while, airing all the way up to July 4th, 1999. The show was considered game show adjacent enough that it ended up on the Nickelodeon Games and Sports channel. But compared to a lot of the game shows that ended up on Gas, preservation of What Would You Do is a bit wanting. I only managed to dig up about 37 of the show's 90 episodes, and you can see from the footage I'm using, a lot of it is in very poor quality from VHS copying and file sharing corruption. Most of what's available is up on YouTube if you want to check it out. Rewinding a bit, going back to Nickelodeon, Double Dare also ended reruns a week earlier than What Would You Do, on July 2nd, 1999. Ending the Marc Summers era of the channel pretty much all at once. And since we did all of Double Dare in one video, including the 2018 reboot, this is effectively the end of Marc Summers for Knacks as well. So let's take a moment to appreciate all that the man has done for the channel. Depending on how you look at it, Marc Summers made Nickelodeon. Without Double Dare, Nickelodeon may never have started turning a profit. And without Marc Summers, Double Dare might not have been the success it was. Guiding children through various games isn't easy. In fact, I don't think anyone else quite managed it until Mike O'Malley. They either tried to be too over the top, or didn't seem comfortable being around kids. Summers was fun, but not in a condescending way. He never talked down to kids. He had a great deal of big brother energy that let him joke along with them. As for What Would You Do, while an inferior show to Double Dare that Summers didn't enjoy working on nearly as much, it did manage to break Nickelodeon out of its child host period and show that yes, kids will watch adults. You just have to find the right adults. Without this, we might not have had the 90s wave of Nickelodeon game shows. We might not have had Wienerville or Blue's Clues or Slime Time Live. It may have been a channel for kids, but age didn't have to hold Nickelodeon back. I'm almost 40. What am I doing with my life? And yet, it's been my ability to be on that level that kids have identified with. I'm 40 chronologically, but maybe 16 in maturity. So today, we salute Marc Summers, the elder statesman of Nickelodeon, the perpetual big brother to us all.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
Next time, I tried to convince you that Nick News wasn't boring and was totally worth watching. No, really, you are all sleeping on some meaningful stuff. Today's research shout-out goes to The Complete Directory to Primetime Network and Cable TV Shows, 1946 to present. The present in this case referring to 1995. In terms of just raw encyclopedia cataloging, books like this were vital before the internet took over, and are still vital now that the internet has become an AI misinformation swamp. Sometimes just being able to cross-reference dates and episode counts can give you a good foundation for things. Thank you all for watching my silly videos in these very not silly times. If you'd like to support Knacks and other Pop Arena projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar goes to production values, research materials, and, frankly, helping me get out of a deep red state. You can also support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, hitting that bell icon for notifications, leaving a comment, sending a one-time donation through PayPal or Coffee, and sharing Knacks with all your friends. Thank you once again, and remember, trans rights are human rights, Black Lives Matter, and free Palestine.